to another edition of the Best Business Minds, where we interview business leaders and academics who write thought-provoking books. I'm Marc Kramer, serial entrepreneur who consults with family businesses and entrepreneurs. And currently, I'm teaching entrepreneurship at Vinh University in Hanoi, Vietnam. Today, please welcome Ben Lytle, author of the book, The Potentialist, The Pursuit of Wisdom. Ben, welcome.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I'm so glad to finally have you here. Ben was scheduled a year ago, so we finally got him here, and it's an excellent book, one that would be great to have for college students to go and read. So, Ben, let's start off with you telling us about your professional history and how you got to where you're at right now.
Okay. I grew up on a ranch in Texas, not a big Dallas kind of ranch, just a very simple, barely subsistence living ranch. But I grew up there, great experience, and near a little farm market town called Greenville, Texas, which is almost now a bedroom community for Dallas. But grew up there and then got into tech when I was only 18 years old, and it paid the bills for me to go to school, work nights at an aerospace company in tech, go to get my undergraduate degree. After I got my graduate degree, took a job in Indiana, came up through with a great company up there, and ultimately with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Indiana, became chief information officer at 34, and also got my law degree at night. And at 32, 34, yeah. And at 36, I was promoted to chief operating officer of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Indiana. 5 years later, was designated to succeed the CEO when he retired in 2 years, asked to develop a strategic plan for the company. And I told the board, this will not be a strategic plan of continuing to do the same things or incrementalism. This is going to be a pretty dramatic strategic plan. The board said, bring it on. I did. They approved it. And I spent 11 years building 2 New York Stock Exchange companies. One was, well, I didn't spend all 11 years. The first one we built was a broker, very similar to Aon or Marsh. And that broker ended up being the 6th largest broker in the United States. And then in parallel began to merge Blue Cross Blue Shield companies to form Anthem. And once we were large enough, we also bought some not-for-profit Blue Cross Blue Shields that were struggling and converted them. And then we took it public. And of course, since that time, it's grown to have a market cap of over $100 billion. And some great management teams after me did a great job, and so it's now just this enormous, very successful company. But it was an idea whose time had come, and we pulled it off. So I'm very proud of that. After that, I was at the peak of my career, and I chose to do the counterintuitive thing. I'd been thinking about it a long time. And I chose to leave Anthem to start a second life, going into business with my sons in the entrepreneurial business, and we built 4 companies together, working on the 5th, and they've been successful. One of them wildly successful. We launched the company that one of our key products was Silver Sneakers, which is today the largest exercise program, I believe the largest exercise program, certainly one of them in the United States, average age 78. And we've gone on to build companies in complex care in the home. And the last company that my son's was totally his idea is a company that does value-based care in Medicaid.
Well, congratulations on a lifetime of success, and especially getting to enjoy being with your own children to build companies that have also been very successful. And it shows that you did a good job of coaching them.
Yeah, and my younger son is the older son was a partner on the other book companies. That my younger son and he was a Purdue grad in tech, spent about 20 years in the tech field, and then decided to become a financial advisor and help people meet their dreams through money, investing their money well. But he is my co-founder of an AI company that we specialize in education and healthcare and insurance, and it's doing very well for an AI company. So we're very proud of it as well.
Are you also an angel investor? Do you invest in other companies?
I have, but not most of the time. I invest in my own stuff. I invest in stuff that either my sons are involved in or I'm involved in. I really don't invest outside of that. And I pretty well specialize only in healthcare and tech. That's it. Because that's what I know, and and there's so much opportunity there. I don't need I don't need to go anywhere else.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here today, and I really enjoyed your book. So let's jump into that. You write that wisdom is the art of living well. How do you personally define living well in today's fast-changing world?
Yeah, first of all, if you allow me, this is a book series. So the book we're talking about today is the second book in the series. So the first they're all the first book, they're all titled The Potentialist, and then they have a subtitle. The first one is The Potentialist: Your Future in the New Reality of the Next 30 Years. The second book, and its purpose was to describe what that new reality is going to look like, and then offer 7 practical steps to be ready to adapt. And so what this series does is it's all about how we adapt to a new reality, which is emerging now. And that's every time in history there's been a major change: the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, 3 prior industrial revolutions. It required a massive adaptation by basically everybody on the planet eventually. And most people weren't prepared. So my job this time, I felt, was to help people prepare. So the first book explained. The second book is how do we thrive, go beyond just adapting to actually to thrive in this time of which is the period of greatest and most profound and rapid change in human history. So now going back to answer your question directly, but I did want to put it in that context. The art of living well, wisdom is defined as the art of living well. That's the classic definition if you go in and just look at it in philosophy. But how you live well is by making the best possible decisions throughout your life, because your decisions define you, define your relationships with other people, and define the mark you leave on the world. And so decision making, wise decision making, was once something that people taught a lot in different cultures, and we've not done that. We don't teach wisdom anywhere. And so the art of living well is making the wisest possible decisions throughout life. There is a way to learn how to do that. I had the good fortune to learn that over a period of years. And that process is what the second book is all about, and reaching your potential, because the two are related. Knowing what your potential is, working towards it, and also becoming wise in the process.
Yeah, I work on that with my students every day. I tell them my job is for me to maximize their potential, and that if they don't walk out of my class in 12 or 15 weeks with more skills than they walked in with, then I failed them. And I'm constantly harping on or making them communicate their ideas in a public forum, because a lot of them don't want to do that. And I said, you know what? Today you're competing against AI. And so now you have to differentiate yourself, not just from people, but the machine. And the only way you can do that is by sharing your thoughts, because the machine can't think in an abstract way, but you can. So we need to constantly work on that.
Yeah, and Mark, I mean, I give speeches. I probably spoke to at least 20,000 people in person, not counting, of course, all the stuff on social media and stuff like that. But and through my books, but I ask audiences all the time, what is wisdom? Anybody want to define it? Rarely get anybody willing to do it. What's your potential? Most of them, nobody even ventures it. Well, one of the things that's critical here, that's so timely in working with AI, is I would venture to say that the existential question of the next 3 decades is, for every single person, and nobody can answer it for you, is how do I integrate with intelligent automation, which is going to be all around me, in a way that enhances my humanity and doesn't degrade it. That is the existential question. So, and the answer is, you just gave it. If you don't understand what makes you human, so because I'll ask the audience, what makes you human? And I'll never get more than 2 or 3. Well, there's a whole series of about 14, 15 things that most philosophers and psychologists will say are the key elements of what makes us human. And if you don't know what those are, then how are you going to differentiate yourself from intelligent automation? So it's exactly what you're saying in your class. You have to understand it's a machine, it's abstract, no matter what kind of what things we can do with it, it's still not capable of intimacy. It's not capable of moral reasoning. So those are the things that I think you're exactly on the right hand, and we're both basically doing the same kind of things. We're trying to get people ready to live in that world.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a hackathon next month focused on how do we create jobs in the AI era, because
Right.
all they read every day, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, is telling you that you're going to be out of a job. I said to my freshmen, because I have 740 in this one class, it's up to you to save your own generation. So
Sure.
you better think about what kind of products and services that you can create that will create jobs, and what things could you bring of value to enhance AI. And that could be a whole nother line of industries that can go and get behind AI.
Mark, I'm shocked when people, very brilliant people, come to, I'm sorry, just a boneheaded conclusion that there's not going to be anything for human beings to do. Do we have a shortage of problems to solve?
Yeah, I know.
I
I
don't
said the
think
same thing.
so. I
Yeah.
don't think so. And so what we'll do is free people to use the talents that only humans have, which is creative solutions, into solving problems through intuition, which AI can never and will never have, and complex human relationships, which AI will never be any good at. And so there'll be plenty of problems to solve. And I think I look at it a different way. It'll free humanity, a lot of humanity, from doing subhuman work. Repetition is not good human work. Physical, dangerous jobs is not good use of human beings. And so we'll free people to do that. And I often say I dream of the day when I look out my window here in Arizona and I don't see any people doing landscaping in my lawn. There's one guy out there with a joystick. Because it's too hot for human beings to be out there in the summer, and so some people, some audiences will say, well, but they can't do this kind of work. I said, yes, they can. Every human being's got a creative core. We just haven't learned how to tap it, and we will. When we don't have enough people, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I tell my students, I ask them, how many of you feel that you have a creative mind? And very few people raise their hands. I said, but if you experience things, if you travel, if you read, if you observe, ideas will start flowing in. You won't be able to
Absolutely.
stop the ideas.
Absolutely. And also, one of the things, Mark, that is in that book, the Pursuit of Wisdom, there are very powerful ways to be creative that we already know, we already do it. We just don't think it's within our command. One of them is one of the oldest, and it was what Jung called active imagination. It goes way back, though, before him to St. Ignatius and other people, which is how do you learn how to play any sport? How do you learn how to load your dishwasher or do in your own personal way or make your bed? Where you do it, and after a while it's mindless. You don't even think about it. It's muscle memory. You're building muscle memory by visualizing what you want to do and then realizing it. Visualize it and realize it. Jung called it active imagination. Well, we do that today unconsciously when we're learning stuff, particularly physical tasks. But the truth of the matter is we can actively do that. You can say, I want to really understand this, or I want to really get good at this. And what it does is every time you imagine it, it's building that muscle memory and it'll call it up when it needs it. And it's extraordinarily powerful in terms of a way to expand your learning skills. And it's available to all of us. And again, if you play sports or anything else, you do it because you'll imagine that great shot. You'll imagine giving that good speech. You'll imagine having a wonderful evening with your loved ones. That's how you do it. That's one that's untapped. Another one, is ask yourself, do you ever have aha moments? Aha moments requires no cognitive effort to learn. 1 minute you don't know something, and the next minute you do. And a lot of people, everybody has, first of all, people say they don't, they do. They just aren't paying attention. Now, the fact of the matter is, that's a fabulous way to learn because you're getting insights and raising stuff to consciousness. Your mind does it with no effort on your part. What most people do, though, is they don't take the time to record them and pay attention to them. Always write them down, always record them, because later, even if in the moment you don't know where that idea came from or that inspiration and you don't see its relevance, if you keep track of it, later you will. And some very famous people learned this skill, learned to do that. And Ernest Hemingway did it. That's how he got a lot of inspirations for his books and his characters. He would come home from bars or a day and drop notes out of his pockets that he had taken, and he threw them in a file. And when he got ready to write a book, he'd pull them out, lay them all over his floor in his bed, and he would start to pull characters together. So it's a fabulous tool, and it's zero effort to learn.
So going along these lines of wisdom, you predict the democratization of wisdom. What will make wisdom accessible to everyone, not just the elite?
It already is. It already is. It's more paying attention than anything else and deliberate effort. So I interviewed over 400 people that I considered to be very wise. Not all of those people were people you would expect. One was a maid. Another one was basically the janitor. He ultimately became the lead janitor, but he was a janitor in a school. These were very wise people, and they learned it on their own. So it's available to you if you want it. So what I'm trying to do is to show people how easy it is, because we've been led to believe, we've assumed that it's very difficult to become wise. It's not. We've assumed it's very difficult to achieve our potential. It's not. It's simply a matter of, I want to do that. How do I do it? And devoting very little time a day, less than an hour a day, and not an hour of dedicated time. It can be in 10-minute segments, 15-minute segments. That's how you do it. And it can be democratized, but it won't. It will start with people who are pace setters, who decide they want to be and recognize that wisdom decision making in a time of great change, in a time where we have less reliable institutional guidance, is the most important skill for these next few decades. That's where it starts, is that you have to make it important, make it a priority. And then once you know how to start being conscious, just like I said, about things like visualize to realize, paying attention to your inspirations, keeping track of them, turning them into something, you'll become wise.
So going along that, what you just said, what are the daily practices and maybe daily practices you do that helps people unlock that best self?
The very first and the very first and most important is gratitude. If you don't wake up every day and treasure your life, you won't have the motivation to make you make yourself better or to make life better for other people. That simple. The second thing is when you go through gratitude, it's recognizing, and it's one of those unavoidable questions that I put in the book. Unavoidable meaning if you don't answer it, you've answered it. If you don't answer it consciously, you've answered it, which is, does my life and how I live it matter? If you don't think your life matters and you wake up not feeling happy, not for or feeling gratitude for the gift of life, then you probably won't put the effort in to do anything with it, particularly to help to influence other people as well as yourself, to make things better for yourself. So those are practices. I do that every morning when I wake up. I don't immediately, get up and start doing stuff. I always leave myself a half an hour to just slowly drink my coffee and reflect on my life. Reflect about, am I doing what things do I want to do today that would have a positive influence on my life and on other people's lives. And then at night, reflect back, and I have it's chapter 11 of the first book. It's the last chapter of the first book, where I talk about what success is. And success is not money, fame, power, appearance, social status, any of those things. Those things are fine, but that's not going to satisfy you. One of the things that I learned from interviewing all those wealthy people, as well as literature, is success is being able to, when you lay your head on a pillow at night or at the end of your life, reflecting on the end of your life, saying, I did my best to be my best and left the world and the people I met along the way a little better than I found them. And the little better is important because it's a humility that I don't change the world. I help, but I contribute what I can. And so every morning, that's my motto before I go off. And every night when I go to bed, I check myself, how did I do today? And if you do that, I will guarantee you'll feel successful. Every one of those 400 people basically said that in their own words. So that's a simple practice. 30 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes, 10 minutes before you go to bed at night, with that check right there.
Why are these unavoidable questions so essential to understanding ourselves and the world? Life's unavoidable questions.
Well, it started, Mark, with as I was studying and researching, which I've been doing for 50 years, but I mean, I dove deep again when I was writing these books about the cultures that did try to accelerate wisdom in their young people, that they didn't just leave it to life experience and all that they actually tried to accelerate wisdom in young people. And I was particularly pointed to the Greeks. Why did they have these discussions, which is really, those discussions were the foundation of Greek philosophy, with Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and others. Why did they have these discussions with these young men at that time, where they would ask them these what they call, existential questions that I called unavoidable, just to let you know they're, unfortunately today, much of our culture takes, you mention existential question, they go, philosophy, it's not practical stuff. Well, it turns out it's essential to answer those questions. And I'm learning more and more all the time about how essential it is. So take a few examples. If I don't answer the question, does my life and how I live it matter? Why will I go to the effort to make my own life mean anything, or that I'm going to care how I influence others? I have to answer that question. And in fact, the answer is, the best answer is, the real answer is, everything I do influences infinity. The world changes. It's nonsensical to think that you can go through life and not affect all the things around you. Second one that's important to come to grips with is the human race being evolved to abundance or extinction. Now, none of us know for sure, but how you answer that question is going to totally change your outlook on life and totally change your outlook on how you influence others. Another, are people fundamentally good and getting better? Are they fundamentally bad and getting worse? Despite all the stuff you hear on TV, any assessment of the progress of human beings would say they're getting better. There's no way to say otherwise. But so many people walk around not thinking just the opposite. Now, if you age, you'll find that when you talk to a lot of older people, they're very negative and they're very unhappy. They never answered those questions. And so what happens if you don't answer it is the collective ego, the collective judgment, or somebody else's opinion fills that void. That's why they're unavoidable. You have to answer them for yourself and use the evidence. I always say, where's your evidence? Tell me where your evidence is that the human race is getting worse. Tell me where your evidence is after all this time, why we're necessarily marching to extinction. Because so far, you would say that's not the march. That help?
And every generation says that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's worse now than it's ever. Every presidential election, we're farther apart now than we were the last time. Yeah.
But again,
So,
Mark, one of the things about wisdom is if you study the tension of the opposites and you study how that affects societies and affects our own growth, you'd understand that these kind of tensions are inevitable and they're actually there they're setting the stage for a growth in humanity. When you divide, something will force us ultimately to come back together and we'll grow. That's the way we grow as human beings. That's the way society grows. Everything that works in the microcosm of me works in the macrocosm as well. And so that's the reason I don't worry about this divide. I just keep asking, okay, what's going to be the trigger that advances us? Sometimes it's ugly first. And other times it goes a little smoother. We don't know what will change it. It could be a technological breakthrough. It could be some world event that would unite us. We don't know. It could be a leader that can unite. But whatever it is, we will get through this. It's happened many, many times throughout history. And by the way, we lose perspective. We think it's a U.S. problem. It's not. It's worldwide. Now, what would divide the entire world right now? What would divide us? I think there's a fundamental unresolved question between what some people would call social justice, but that's too general a definition to be operable, and people who say individuality and innovation and creativity through market-based capitalism. So it's not a socialism capitalism argument. We haven't, and we won't get the answer until we properly define those polarities, and we haven't yet.
Well, that's because we're not in moderation. We're out of whack on one way or the other.
And that's right. And you'll keep going back and forth, but that's the way our minds work too. And so there's so much for us to learn about watching what happens in society is we go back and forth until we exhaust ourselves or someone defines this polarity clearly enough that it becomes actionable. That's the law of polarity.
How can young people begin cultivating this habit of inquiry?
That's a great question. One of the things, about this new reality we're living in, and this is also true of every period of great change, it creates a need and it gives you the means to solve it, to address the need. Every time. It takes us a while to realize it sometimes. But this is a good point. and it's one of the reasons I believe wisdom will be democratized. The most important quality of wisdom is learning to ask the right question of yourself or anyone else. And so today we don't teach that much in schools. Some schools do. Classical schools do more than traditional education. But ask the right question. Well, guess what is the number one skill of working with AI? You got to ask the right question. So to be successful, you're going to become a very good question asker. You're going to become a good questioner, because you won't be able to work with this intelligent automation very effectively if you don't. And so that's going to hone that skill of asking questions, working with automation, but we'll also improve that question of asking that question to ourselves, because that's a key element of wisdom. Do I ask myself the right questions? Do I ask other people the right questions?
I tell my students all the time that the more they read, the more they learn, the smarter the questions that they ask, the better AI will work for them. Because right now they're not reading enough and experiencing enough, and so their questions are very superficial. So they're not really maximizing what they could get out of AI that will allow them to think about new ideas, products, services, on how to create great companies and more success and more employment.
Yeah, and Mark, go back, take it to another level. Every day, every single day, we make hundreds of decisions. Not all of them hugely consequential, but we make them. And we often do so without really pausing for 10 seconds. It doesn't take any time. And say, what am I trying to do here? What's the purpose of this? What's this going to do for me? Do I have the information I need to make the best possible decision? So again, asking the right questions of yourself and others and of life is the most essential skill of wisdom. And now it becomes the most important skill to be effective in business and your career. So now we're going to have people pay a lot more attention to how do you formulate a good question. I was trained as a lawyer. That's most important. One of the things they teach you is, it'll be the question, not your brilliance, that wins the case. It'll be asking the right question at the right time.
Well, I could tell you would have been a great trial lawyer. I think you would have done really well in that field. You draw parallels between natural law and human behavior. How does understanding natural law lead to wiser decisions?
Okay, so it's again one of those things. I believe we are in a renaissance, or we're much of what we're going to experience the next few years, a renaissance of very old thought. So the idea that there are a set of natural laws that guide the universe, guide our life, guide all of existence, for science to discover and explain, but it's not just science, it's us as well. That came out of the Enlightenment. So it's been around a long time. It's one of the main principles that emerged from the Enlightenment and guided the growth of science and scientific inquiry and deliberate inquiry. So this is not a Ben Lytle idea. This is the Enlightenment. But we've forgotten it, and it's so important. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I give several examples of natural law in the book. One of the natural, and I've been explaining one here a moment ago, the law of polarity. It basically is one of the most important things to understand about how decisions are made. But another one, I asked audiences, do you believe in Newton's third law? And some of them kept stopping there. It's basically the law of cause and effect. That's a simple way to think about it. One action has an equal and opposite reaction. And you go, okay, yeah. Do you believe that's a law or a suggestion? And people are a little puzzled by it. Say, well,
Right.
it's not a suggestion, it's a law. I said, now, okay, now how many of you believe in karma? And like, but before I'd say, is it a law? And 100% of the people hold up their hands. And I said, okay, well, do you believe in karma? Now it's 50%. I said, well, wait a minute. Do you realize karma is simply an expression of Newton's law in Eastern terms? And it's the law of consequences, right? So why is it that as human beings, if you go to the mortality tables, which, being an ex-insurance guy, I actually looked at pretty frequently. You look at the mortality tables, how many people die unnecessarily because they refuse to accept the law of cause and effect? If I do this, this is going to happen. And so there's an example of how much better life would be, how many more people would live to their full life if they simply said, no, that's a real law. That's not a suggestion. So if I choose to drive 90 miles an hour down a freeway, then I've just said, the rules don't apply to me. The law doesn't apply to me. And I'm not talking about man's law. I'm talking about the law that I'm probably going to kill myself. And,
right.
And that is the ego. Our ego always tells us the laws don't apply to us because I'm so important. I'm the center of the universe. And of course, it's foolishness. And if you follow the behavior of narcissistic people, which are the ultimate dominated ego, they do such self-destructive things. It's mind-blowing, and destructive to other people as well. So there's an example of just one law that says, all right, let's pay attention to it. I need to pay a lot more attention and recognize, no, the laws do apply to me. It's not a suggestion.
How can you leaders, you describe the psychological body as parallel to the physical one. What does that mean in practical terms? Explain why you wrote that.
Yeah. So one of the remember, all good questions, all learning, all wisdom comes from a good question. Why is it that at this state of human development, that we know tons about our bodies by middle school? By the time we're middle aged, we're Dr. Google, man. We know all. We know everything. We're experts. And yet we don't know the basics of our psychological body, because we're a duality. All of life's a duality. We're a duality. We have a physical body, we have a psychological body. Which one's more important to our health and wellness? I would argue the psychological body, but at least it's of equal importance. So it's simply a metaphor I use, a way to start to understand that just like my physical body has functions and organs, my psychological body does as well. And I need to understand what those are so that I can live to my fullest, and that I won't surprise myself. And it's silly, but imagine for a minute if you didn't know anything about your left arm. You didn't know what it did, so it just dangled along there. And every now and then it would act sort of spontaneously and slap myself in the face. You'd go, well, that's kind of dumb. I'm going to figure out what my left arms are. So that's the thing. We have these organs that are psychological, that have a specific purpose, and if we use them well, we will live a fuller life. We have the ego, the shadow, which is sort of and they each have a very specific function. The ego is to keep you alive. That was its original purpose and its most important purpose. But unfortunately, as threats to our lives have become not physical, for the most part, not physical, but emotional, the ego reacts to emotional threats, and that's not a good thing. The shadow, which is that's the guy that comes in the middle of the night, tells you you're stupid, there's no point in applying for that job because you're not good enough to get it. And people want to repress it, but in fact, what it's doing is revealing a vulnerability that you haven't acknowledged yourself. That's its job. And once you do that, it'll go back to sleep and let you go back to sleep. And then we have a soul, and I'm using soul here not in a religious context, but as an organ, a function of our psychology. And its job is fundamentally to reveal to us timeless truths and many other things, and the aspirations of the collective, the human race. And then the conscience. So most of us know our conscience pretty well. So you learn to use those, and the better you learn to use them, guess what emerges? The real you. And the real you is none of those. It is the real you. And it's a real easy way to test it. How many times you're walking down and you've had something disturbing that day and you're arguing with yourself? Who is doing the arguing? Who's arguing back? It's usually your ego and the real you arguing. So there's no question it exists. And another easy way to tell is, let's say you go out and you do something, just spontaneously. You buy something that's way too expensive, and in the moment you bought it, this doesn't make any sense of it. And you go home and you're arguing with yourself about whether that was a good idea. Who's having the argument? So, and your ego is always irrational. So it's the one who will cause you to do the irrational things. And the real you is the one that's going, you really shouldn't have done
that. By the way, I don't think you mentioned soul, and that's one
no,
of
I did. Yeah, no, I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you were gone there for a second. No, soul, the soul, I definitely, each function. If you notice, you have ego, soul, aspirations of the whole, aspirations of the individual. You have conscience and shadow, and those are the half instinctive, half conscious part of you that try to keep you on the path.
I was listening, and for some reason I missed that part of it. You suggest consciousness can be cultivated like a skill. How can people strengthen their awareness and amid digital distractions? Because I see it all the time in class. I always have to tell the students, put away your phones, close your laptops. Let's have real dialogue.
Yeah, you first of all, as simple as it sounds, what I suggest to people is you have a choice to make. Do you choose to live the life of an ant? Or do you choose to live the life of a conscious human? Now, I'm a big fan of ants. If you looked at them and you judged them, you would say, well, they work hard, they do their job, they take care of the hive. They're and bees are the same way. They're really they have many things that we would say, well, if humans all did that, things would go well. But they're an ant. They have no sense of their place in the world or their place beyond that hive and their instincts. And many people just put their head down and they just go through the day and they never stop to reflect on what's my life about and what am I doing. That's why that practice of the one that I suggested in the morning, at night, at least. And it's always good too to make a break when you come home from work or you've been working and take one right then too. And check, settle down, settle yourself. And those will start, and when you're in those, begin to focus on asking questions, of yourself, asking questions about life. Maybe you had a really bad day. And you could say, how can I feel gratitude when I got kicked in the face 12 times today? Well, the first thing is to understand that adversity or resistance is your greatest teacher. It's not your enemy. And so the right question is, what's it here to teach me? Follow me? And that's where becoming conscious is taking the time to pull back from being the ant and doing these autonomous functions, stop, and really for a moment be a human being. Because being human is first and foremost consciousness.
It's not, a lot of people don't have that at all because they're rushing to get to the next thing.
Absolutely. And you won't. If you don't take time you will live the life of an ant. And so, and again, I don't mean that to be insulting to ants, but humans, it is insulting because the fact that we're not built to be ants. We're built to be, we evolved from that state, and we're evolving every day. In this next 30 years, that evolution is going to accelerate. It's going to accelerate a lot.
And we're seeing it already, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to tell a quick story because I think a lot of times people, you hear so much noise about AI and stuff. I would love to be able to measure, and I bet you would too, what the level of knowledge that is how fast it's increasing just in the last 2 or 3 years because of AI. And I'll tell you a quick story. One of the tricks of a futurist is to watch things other people don't do. So I watch people, what they do with their mobile phones, and that people who have, basically what would someday will be non-human jobs. They're laborers. They're people who have these jobs that they're hoping to get out and get another job someday for the most part. So I was watching a group of taxi drivers. There's a taxi stand where I used to meet my grandkids when I'd pick them up from college in Florence, Italy last year. And so this parking lot, there was a taxi stand. There were always about 25 taxis. And so I'd be waiting for my grandkids. I'd see the lights coming off their mobile phones, in their faces while they're sitting in their taxis. So I speak decent Italian, about like a good 7-year-old. So anyway, I walked over and I started asking, what are you doing on your phone? Do you mind if I ask? And this was what was amazing. A third of them were studying to become a tour guide online because they could make more money becoming a tour guide. And I said, well, what are the other guys doing? He said, well, some of them are playing games, a few of them, but he said, I know some of them that are taking courses online. So here are people you would never suspect. And I've since then watched and gone up and done the same thing with some landscapers. And they're doing similar kind of thing. They're trying to improve themselves, probably at a rate we can't measure, but it's happening. And that's one of the great advances. And it's also, remember, the way these changes occur, it provides the need to change, but also it provides the means. So these people who I'm sure have never read any of this, don't pay a lot of attention to this stuff about the future, they're realizing the kind of jobs I do today are going to go away. And I want to be ready. And so they're doing it instinctively, if nothing else.
And that's what I'm working on with the hackathon that I was mentioning before, is to project what the future opportunities are going to be and have us get ahead of the curve as opposed to trying to catch up.
Right. And, one of the things that I think is really helpful, at least we always, the nature of human beings, and that's a lot of the work of our ego, projects to the negative. And I'm a pragmatic optimist. I look for the evidence. What does the evidence say? Well, we have to remember when we start thinking about human beings can't do this or can't do that, that, in the 9th century, in both the 10th century, in the Atlantic Ocean and in the Pacific Ocean, two cultures decided, I'm not worried. Everybody's saying there's monsters out there. They're just big fish. I'm not worried about it. Everybody's saying it's flat and you'll sail off the other side of the earth. I say you'll fall off the edge of there. I don't believe that. And so the Scandinavians sailed across the Atlantic, discovered Greenland, discovered Iceland and America, and settled them. And in the Pacific Ocean, maybe even more remarkable, they settled Pacific islands when they were vast differences. I mean, the distances were vast, and they loaded pigs and chickens and their families on these boats, and they sailed off, and they did it. They did it because of intuition, intuitive reasoning, which only human beings can do. I don't think it's possible with a math machine. So that we have to remember, these same people that we're saying who today do menial jobs, they're not there because they're incapable of doing more. they're there because that's the jobs that are available. And once though a different kind of work, like you're going to do explore in your hackathon, becomes available, we'll find out a lot of those people are capable of it.
You emphasize intentional living. How does intention differ from ambition or goal setting?
It's intention, I think, is what's the intention of intention? You know, the intention of intention, as I use it, is to live a fully human life, to be a person who is who is easier to work with, to be a person who people tend to trust, and to be an open book in a way. In other words, so what? And I also recognize that a lot of times, how many times have we've gotten crossways with people and they misunderstood your intentions, and you go, well, that's not what I intended, I'm sorry, and you try to dig out of it. Well, it's hard to dig out. It's a lot easier to avoid it in the first place, and it's so simple. All it means is right before I walk into a meeting, right before I see somebody, I tell them, hey, here's why I'm here, and fully disclose it. Here's why I'm here. And I've had salespeople say, well, if I tell them I'm coming to sell them something, they're not going to answer the phone. And well, okay, but at least they'll know what you were there for. The flip side of it is people will say to you, you know, I like working with you because I always know where you're coming from. I always know what you're trying to do. And when you disclose your intention, it makes people more comfortable. They don't have to figure it out. If you don't do it, they put up a guard, particularly if you don't know them real well. It fosters intimacy or closeness with people, and it fosters trust. And so that's why I do it. And again, it's training your mind. I'm getting ready to walk into a meeting with someone. Instead of walking in and starting with a sports game or anything else, as soon as it's comfortable in the conversation, you say, now, I want you to know, here's why I'm here. Here's what I'd like to resolve with you today, or here's what I'd like to discuss with you. And you'll find that big rewards come back from that.
You describe learning states, put in quotation marks, as essential to growth. What are they, and how can people recognize when they're in one?
Yeah, the simplest way for everybody, and this is put it into the category of, we have most of the skills, like conscious intention, that can make us wise and build stronger relationships, but we don't use them for that purpose. But we already know how to use them. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that you've had a bad day. I mean, a really bad day at work. And maybe you had terrible traffic, whatever it is, but you walk in the house and you're in a bad and you walk in, and let's say your little 4-year-old or your spouse is in a really bad state. They're really upset and they need comforting. What do? You switch out of that state of your anger, and you comfort them and you take care of them. Now, you'll find, if you observe, you don't go back in that bad mood. You never go back. You're done with it. We can switch states consciously. That right there proves it. And there are many other examples. And so how does that work? I like to visualize it as like an operating system. Something in the operating system says, in that state and go to this one. Each state, and some of the states are like solidarity, contemplation, reflection. Each of those has an address, just like an IP address. And what is the IP address? It's the feeling I have when I'm in that state. Okay? So now go back. Remember, I mentioned visualize to realize. Visualize each of those states. You visualize them. That's what the book teaches you how to do. Visualize each one of those states, and it will reinforce that IP address. And then you can begin to switch from one to the other. So, for example, when I go out for a walk, I don't take my, I don't look at my phone. I pay attention to nature. I go into the state of gratitude. Gratitude's got a very distinct feeling to it. And I think about, boy, what a beautiful, beautiful world this is. My gosh. Or look at that flower, or whatever it is. And I go into gratitude. Then from gratitude, I go, I wonder what life will be like, 30 years from now. Wonder what'll be different walking this street 30 years from now. I contemplate. What I just switched from was gratitude to contemplation. And then I go, well, what do I need to do differently to really be ready for this world that's coming? That's reflection. Now I've turned my focus from contemplation outside, looking about how the world's going to be, to contemplation inside, reflection about myself. Does that make sense? You follow
Yeah.
me? Yeah.
Yep.
But a good way for tech people, everybody today, because we all understand what operating systems do, is there's an operating system that's letting me recognize that address and consciously switch from one state to the other. And it's very easy to do. You can learn it really quick. And it starts with visualizing to realize what each one of those states feels like. And now it becomes a conscious activity. You'll never be in a bad mood again for very long, because you know how to get out of it. You just visualize going back to that loving, being with a loved one and comforting them. You know you can do it. You switch out of it and you go into the state you want. Now, why is that so important? Because you just expanded your ability to learn dramatically, because you can choose to learn anywhere. And when you get good at it, you can even multitask. And we all do it, but now you're doing it deliberately. You're in a meeting room, you're listening to what's going on in the meeting, and you're fully conscious of that. But at the same time, you go into the state of observation. I'll bet we've all done it, where you feel like you're a fly on the wall. You're watching what's going on. You're observing the interaction of the group of people you're sitting with. We can all do that. Why shouldn't we?
We're getting to the end, and the hour went super fast. I'm wondering what's your last piece of advice here, especially for younger people, because I think when they equate wisdom, they equate it with age.
Right.
But you've said that you've interviewed all these people, different ages, different
Absolutely.
professions, not Harvard and Oxford graduates, maids, gardeners, who all provide wisdom. At, 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 at what age can you start actually acquiring wisdom and can rely on that as a way to guide you?
As children, you can start teaching children wise decisions and why they make them, instead of saying, don't do that. Here's why. Always give the why. You can teach children this, but at an young adult age, you can really accelerate your wisdom. I did it. I was part of a program that did it. I launched one this spring here with 11 people aged 25 to 40. They all reported dramatic acceleration in their own wisdom in just a few sessions. So number one, you can do this. The only thing that holds the human race back from its potential is its lack of belief in itself. And often that's a projected lack of belief in myself. So I project, well, I don't think I can do this, so therefore the human race can't do it. Well, we can all do it, and we can become better. We can reach our best selves. Absolutely. We can reach our potential. It's very definable. And we can become wise in the process. And the two are related, because again, our psychological body is organic. As you become wiser, you get closer to your potential. As you get closer to your potential, you become wiser. So they are in parallel pursuit. You can do it. This is not hard. If you don't believe it, read my book. There are other programs like mindfulness and stuff like that that are very good. But mine, I think, is more pragmatic, and you don't need somebody else. All you need is All you need is the book and the workbook. And there is with that book, The Pursuit of Wisdom, there's a full workbook that you can download from my website, potentialistfuture.com. You can do this. And so why wouldn't you ask yourself the question, why wouldn't I do this? Why wouldn't I want to reach my potential and become wise? What's holding me back? If you really look at it, it's your ego. It likes having control of you. And it don't want to give it up, because once you develop that real you, it's in the back seat where it belongs.
Yeah, people don't like to think that they're wrong in their thinking, and they're not constantly evolving. And I think that's, no matter what age you are, if you're constantly looking to evolve and change yourself and don't think that you've stopped growing, isn't that why couples end up in many times end up in divorce, is because both of them not working for a common goal, and both of them not evolving.
Right. And you will evolve. I mean, just age and, and experience will give you, not all people, but it will give some people some wisdom. But this is not that. This is going way beyond. This is going to human potential, what you can be. And if a guy like me that grew up on a ranch in Texas can develop wisdom by pursuing these practices, you sure can. And I think it will pay off. I mean, it paid off for me in my career, because I was promoted at 36 years old to be chief operating officer of a $1 billion company. And one of the reasons I asked people, why did you choose me? There were so many people that had more experience, been here longer, and they said, you're wise beyond your years. I can't tell you how many times people said that to me. And that was a direct result of these 10 programs.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, and it was worth the year to wait for you.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, it was fun. So it was fun to be with you.
Everybody, have a wonderful rest of your week and a good weekend. And Ben, I look forward to having you back with the next iteration of the book.
Okay. Yeah, the next one's coming out next year.
Everybody, take care.